Good afternoon, everyone. The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 4 p.m. Council, any additions or deletions to today's agenda? Seeing none, administration.
Nothing from administration.
CEO Panasic, with that, Council, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor LaBerge.
Move that we adopt the agenda as presented for the regular council meeting, June 20th, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate, questions? Seeing none, we will commence voting. Maybe 1 moment here. It is not popular. Oh, and there we go. Yeah. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, administration, for your assistance there. That will bring us to our council minutes for adoption. Council, any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we adopt the regular council meeting minutes for June 6, 2023, and the committee of the whole minutes for June 13th, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, we will commence voting. And that is carried unanimously. That'll bring us to our citizens minute with council. This is your opportunity. You have 1 minute. Please come forward, say your name and share your thoughts. And seeing no one, that'll bring us to our delegation and presentations component for today. And that's 5.1, ExquisiCare Presentation, CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just turn to Ms. Davy Campbell to pull Don Harsh up on the screen.
Hello, Ms. Harsh.
Hi there.
All right, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. And thanks so much for having me today. Again, Dawn Harsh. I'm president and founder of ExquisiCare Senior Living. What ExquisiCare is a senior living and care environment that's an alternative to institutional long-term care. And we currently have 3, what government is calling small homes in Southwest Edmonton. And ExquisiCare, along with our new owner, is SE Health, which is St. Elizabeth Health. It's a national organization with over 8,000 employees. We were very happy to be acquired by them earlier this year. It's a not-for-profit social enterprise. And right after we were acquired, the government of Alberta released a grant to build small home long-term care homes across Alberta. there were a number of reports released by the government over the last 2 to 5 years outlining how we want to see changes to how we house and care for seniors. And one of those big changes was the introduction of small homes. So basically, small homes they look and feel like a residential home with anywhere between 4 and 14 residents, but we do all levels of care. So anything from assisted living up to and including long-term care and even through that palliative stage. And it's a great way to bring a really high level of respectful and loving care in a true home to seniors in more rural communities, so that they're not institutionalized or warehoused in what we know as traditional institutional long-term care. And so I'm here today because we are looking for land. That's probably the biggest challenge with this, because the grant was released just in April and it closes in August. After we find the land, of course, we have to design the homes. Sometimes there's some rezoning or land use amendments that have to be made. We're looking for partners. We do want to purchase the land, but if we can get that at a decent price, we're happy about that. And then there is a grant for the capital cost. And then the care itself is funded through AHS. It will not be exactly like the supportive living or long-term care funding models, but it will be completely funded. So this will be an affordable way to bring a high quality, highly clinical model of respectful care to the folks in Hinton. And so we would love to do that. And I guess I'm here today to just tell you who we are, what we do, and ask to see if there is certainly any land that you would be willing to sell to us. I'll open it up for questions, I guess.
Thank you for that introduction, Ms. Harsh, and I'll open it up to the floor, as you said, and I have Councillor Magoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Harsh, just out of curiosity, how long have those 3 small home models that you've been talking about in Edmonton, how long have they been up and running?
11 years. So I founded the company about 12 years ago. Our first home was built. And I can send a link as well to Jordan, and you can actually see videos of the home. The goal is for them to really blend into the neighborhood, and we get great results. Even though they look and feel like a residential home, they're actually built to a B2 or B3 construction code. So in Edmonton, residentially zoned lots, but there's a permissible use for group homes. I know some of the jurisdictions that we're talking to are actually introducing a new land use for something called a community care home, because sometimes group homes get a bad rap. So long answer, at least 11 years for our first home, second home about 7, and the third home 2 or 3 years.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Councillor Magoon. I have Councillor Haas.
Thank you. If you could please, you said the funding of a resident is funded by Alberta Health Services. Is that correct?
The care funding is funded by Alberta Health Services, but their accommodation fee, they pay themselves. So that's legislated right now by Government of Alberta to about $65 a day. So they do have to pay for their accommodation, meals, housekeeping, but then the care, so any of their care needs is covered.
So ballpark, you said $65 a day. Ballpark, what would a resident out of pocket have to spend?
About 2,500, if I'm not mistaken. And that would be similar to any of your SL4 or long-term care spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. I have Councillor Taylor.
I'm excited to hear about this. How is this different than what we have in Hinton?
I'm not sure what all you have in Hinton. I'm suspecting that you have SL4, and typically SL4, which means supportive living for, or SL4D, supportive living for dementia. They're typically bigger facilities. So minimum on the old funding model is about 30 beds. So these look and feel more like an apartment or an institution. I can speak to Edmonton for sure. We have 100, 200 bed long-term care facilities where the resident gets a bedroom and they go to a dining room and they eat, and it's very institutional food. It's got an institutional feel. These homes, the workers are multi-skilled. So they are professionally staffed with healthcare aides, nurses, overseeing. We have doctors that visit, we have nurses on call. So a very high level of care, but it's a true home. So it really looks and feels from the outside like every other house on the street, albeit they're large. So they're about 8,000 square feet. But on the inside, you know, our residents will sometimes even answer the door. They really feel like they're at home. Home cooked meals. It's just a completely different feel. There is a similar model in the US called the greenhouse model, and they have well over several hundred homes throughout America. And they've been able to show how much better the outcomes are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions. First question is, you're looking for land. Is that land that is serviced or unserviced?
Preferably serviced, but if it's not, then we'll make it happen.
Okay, and my next question, are we looking at people living there, Hinton citizens, or people from within the county?
So that is up to Alberta Health Services. So they control who gets admission. But they do, and I don't know if I can speak for them. They certainly try and place people from within the community there first, but I suspect it would draw from people around the area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. I have myself, what is your contractual obligation in lengths of years based on this service in the event if, let's say, they're not being rented or things of that nature? What are the alternative options at your disposal in the future if things were to go differently?
Yeah, so there's a 30-year term attached to the capital grant that we're on contract with AHS for the care.
Okay, perfect. Thanks very much for that. Council, anything further for Ms. Harsh? Seeing none, this is our first action item coming up, so you're more than free to join and watch the conversation. So we appreciate your time today. And again, we look forward to chatting with you in the near future.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. That'll bring us to our action items for this evening. 6.1 Senior Care Home, CO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So I won't go into much of the background as I believe Ms. Harsh has touched on that. But we are looking at a proposal from ExquisiCare, subsidiary of SE Health, to come into the town of Hinton through a capital grant in order to provide 2 of these homes. So what we've done is we've provided 2 options that we think would fit well within the character of the community and would fit well with the surrounding amenities. You'll see that on attachment 1. Option A, you'll find that is actually part of the Bhutan lands, also known as phase 2 of the Bhutan lands. While this type of development fits within the general character and the general intent of the Bhutan lands, which is to accommodate seniors living, it would require a land use bylaw amendment because it is designated for semi-detached homes in phase 2. Option B, it is currently zoned as Parks and Rec, so that parcel also would require a land use bylaw amendment. Regardless of the lands that we do, we would need to make some tweaks to the land use bylaw just because this is a unique type of development and one that we don't accommodate for within our bylaws. The most equivalent is residential senior care homes, but that only allows for up to 6 patients at a time. The homes that are being proposed here are up to 12. So we've identified 2 in talking to Ms. Harsh. Her preference is option A, and that's just because of well, there's a number of different options, but one of the attractive options is the potential for partnership with Pine Valley Lodge. You know, the partnership with the municipality on providing land at a more than fair rate. The possibilities of some synergies and some of the services that are provided with Pine Valley is also attractive, especially when trying to get the grant. So that was the preferable option. There is also option B, which is just north and 190 Moyer Drive, which is currently a flat parcel. That's easily developable. Services are adjacent to both of those properties, but if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, CO Panasic. I have Councillor McGoonan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, CAO, the only question I have revolves around the need to advertise if we're planning on selling a parcel below market value. So I guess my understanding had been previous to this is that essentially if we're ever as a municipality planning on doing that, I think it was like below 10%, whatever it was, we had to go and communicate that. On page 2 of the report, it says under the communication section that we do not need to advertise that as per 72B. Can you just clarify for us a little bit behind that?
Through the mayor to member of council. So if we as a municipality are going to sell land at less than market value to a private entity, we do have a requirement that we have to advertise and go through that process as outlined through the MGA. If we are going to provide land at less than market value to a nonprofit organization like we're contemplating here, then we don't have a legislated responsibility to advertise and go through the process.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Councillor Magoon. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the letter of intent, I'm just wondering if there's anything that is contained in there or could be added to the letter of intent to ensure that this development is done in a timely way and that these properties come online for the people who need them in a reasonable amount of time.
Through the mayor to the rest of council. So we structured the letter of intent and really what it is it is an offer to sell the land at the terms identified in the letter. But one of the contingent regulatory items that we've included is the negotiation of a purchase and sale agreement acceptable to the town. So typically those necessary protection like timelines for the municipality would be included in that agreement. So that would have to be drafted and approved to the satisfaction of the town before moving forward with the selling of the land.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'd have that the question would be, would that come back to council at some point in the future? If not, would it include a reversion clause like we have in some other agreements where we've partnered with entities to do this type of development, that if it's not at least started by a certain date, ownership of the property reverts back to the town of Hinton for the price at which it was sold?
So through the mayor, this will go back to council, but yes, those types of terms would all be included in there. And that's been our common practice with other equivalent developments. So we would continue with that as a best practice.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. I have Councillor Taylor.
What due diligence of the operator has occurred?
Through the mayor to the rest of council. So we have done some due diligence on confirming the company is who they say they are. They're associated with SE Health. SE Health is as it was mentioned before, a quite large, a very large nonprofit organization. So along with that, the requirements of the actual granting body are going to be a due diligence through the process as well. So we're comfortable with the company, with the offer, and with partnering with this organization.
Thanks. I'm prepared to make a motion. I would like to put forward option A, option 1. Yeah, the council agrees to offer area of the Bootown lands for 50% of the appraised value, contingent on fulfilling the requirements outlined in the attached letter of intent. I think this supports a portion of our population with complex health needs. I think that's important. I like the proximity to the healthcare center. And I don't think this is going to have locations, not going to cause us any undue problems going forward. And I'm just really excited to see these kind of options come forward. We're not going to get, it's going to get built, taken care of. We're not going to be on the hook for operational costs. It's just an exciting way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we now have a motion on the floor of Councillor Magoon. One moment here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also really excited. This is actually a model I got to see up close down in the States. This is a model that my mother managed. And I know when Ms. Harsh was talking about respecting the dignity of the residents, it really was that. It was a model where people felt more at home. It certainly had a more relaxed, more homey feel to it. And I think that's just good for respecting the dignity of the human involved. So I'm very excited to see this.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you. So in the body of the report, we're talking about an assessed value of that piece of land, about $371,000. I guess it's 1.39 acres. That's like 267,000 an acre. What has there been an appraisal done on that? Like, is that the trading? Is that the amount that's we would use to calculate 50%?
Through the mayor to the rest of council, no, we included the appraised value as the closest thing that we had available to us to market value. But we are recommending that we provide it at 50% of the appraised value. So we would need to get an appraisal on the land.
That's good. I just noticed the difference of the two words used there. So I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will be in support of this. You know, when I looked online and looked at the other homes, you know, I was a little bit concerned at first with the cost because they are quite extravagant. However, based on the questions and answers by Ms. Harsh, you know, it's in line with what we currently have in our communities for other services as well. And yeah, I think this would be a great addition to our community, and it's in a perfect area as well, in that close proximity to our Pine Valley Lodge. So excited to see you know, this play out in the future weeks. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, any further debate, questions? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is that council agrees to offer area 2 of the Bhutan lands for 50% of the appraised value contingent on fulfilling the requirements as outlined in the attached letter of intent, and we will commence voting. Just waiting for Councillor Race. Oh, and it is carried unanimously. Council, anything further for 6.1? Councillor Taylor.
This wasn't an overriding concern for me, therefore I didn't bring it up before the motion, but it is a question. Do you think we need to be concerned about protecting ourselves from, after it's built, from a sudden sale, or you know, if it gets sold to somebody who doesn't have the, you know, the reputation of this company later on? Is that something we need to worry about?
Through the mayor to members of council. So a few things, as it was mentioned before, the capital funding is contingent on that 30-year period. If they sell it to another vendor, I mean, those are all scenarios that we can protect ourselves through a purchase sale agreement. But as long as they are an organization that is running the senior care homes in compliance with the legislation and all of the standards that are outlined through seniors care accommodation standards, then I think that we would be okay with the use. But I guess there is no guarantee that they wouldn't transfer to a new operator. But we can ensure that the standards will be maintained based on what the intent is that we're building today.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, anything further for 6.1? Seeing and none, thank you, administration and council. That'll bring us to 6.2 for this afternoon, Forest Heights Drive, CO Panasik.
Thank you, Mayor. To the rest of council, the Forest Heights Drive fence report is before you. It's been brought forward a few times. I will turn it over to Lorraine if there's anything to add.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, so this report is before you this evening for a decision on whether to add additional separation between the Forest Heights Drive residences from the existing adjacent commercial property. In the report, administration has outlined 3 options for council's consideration. Options 1 and 2 were variations of a construction of a solid wood fence, including labor and materials based on local contractor quotes that we received. Option 3 is for additional planting. And administration is recommending option 3 to plant additional trees and shrubs along the north side of Forest Heights Drive, 40 meters to the property line of 109 Forest Heights Drive for the 2024 budget as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, administration. Council, any questions, directions? What would we like to do with this? Councillor Magoon.
Just a quick question regarding the option 3 notation. And if there's no number around it, that's fine for right now. Do we have any idea what the increase in cost might be if the planting of trees was to continue along the backside of 109?
Thank you, Mayor, through to council. Actually, from my understanding, it would triple in cost. So based on those estimated costs that are in the report for both, if it was the town doing it or if it was a local contractor, you would be looking at triple the cost.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First question is, what does a high level quote mean in regards to the contractor pricing?
Thank you, Mayor, through to council, Councillor Race. Basically, it wasn't a formal quote as far as the RFQ process goes. It was just reaching out and phone call, just, hey, can you send us a quote? And here's what we needed on. If that explains it. Trent could maybe add to that. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could, through the mayor to members of council. So we still would have to go through our procurement process. These aren't legally binding offers to say, yes, we will build the fence for this amount. This was simply, sending them some maps and saying, we're looking preliminary at some estimates for building a fence along this area. How much, can you provide a quote for purposes of budgeting and for council to make a decision before we go through the formal procurement process?
May I continue? So I'm thinking that that amount could go up. Like these contractors did not walk the line, did not physically go out there and see that land.
Through the mayor to the rest of council, we don't know exactly how much effort they put into developing these quotes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor LaBerge.
Okay, I need to ask the obvious question. So I know that there's a proponent for the fence. Have we had that discussion with everyone up there and said, hey, thinking of building a fence on the north side of the property? Does everybody agree to that happening? What I don't want to see us do is jump out of the pan and into the fire.
Through the mayor, no, we haven't canvassed the remainder of the community in Forest Heights.
Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question, when I look at the map for option 3, the proposed fence goes further. My understanding is one of the properties is not okay with that fence. But my concern is when I look at it, is that going to fix the concern of the residents? Because when I look at the added trees in that particular area, depending, I guess, on the trajectory, it looks like it only really benefits two properties that are right there, which maybe are the two properties that are in question. I don't believe we've ever been given any addresses that particularly were affected by lights or whatever it may be that was brought forward. So I guess, is administration confident that the concerns that are out there, that option would be viable, would fix or the issue with the recommendation of number 3? Have we gone out there and seen, honestly?
Administration?
Thank you, Mayor, through to council. The reason we have only put the option 3 for the 40 meters of along Forest Heights Drive is that the residents at 109 acts as a natural buffer to the commercial property as it sits right now as a visual block. Thank you.
CO Panasic?
Through the mayor to members of council, I can tell you, at least anecdotally, in driving that stretch, to me, that was by far the worst location where you could actually see through the trees to the commercial development on the other side. Once you got to a little bit past the house and the shop, I couldn't really see, at least from a car. Now I can't speak to being up on the second floor of a house across the road or anything like that, but at least from a vehicle, and my perspective in driving the road was that was the location that had the least amount of buffer and the most view of the commercial entity on the other side.
Thank you, CO Panasic. I have myself for the alternative option number 4 to build a 8-foot fence for 133 meters. Would the intent be to build an 8-foot fence on the right of way that is 8 feet above the at-grade level of the homes? Considering there is a slope, what is the intent of the feet above the at-grade level of 109 and all the other homes? Would it be on the slope and only be 4 feet above upgrade? What is the intent of 8 feet?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, through to council. The 8 feet actually came from the delegation that proposed 8 feet in his proposal to council. Given that our typical fence height is 6 feet, which is about 2.5 meters, commercial industrial areas, we can give variance to that. But again, you're correct. With that slope, we're not even sure if 8 feet is going to suffice to actually do what it's intended to do.
So if I may, my follow-up, should we, if that were to be the will of council, there's appetite for that, should we clarify the intent that it's X feet, or to actually clarify the feet above the at-grade level that will actually have an effect on creating that buffer? Because to me, to create an 8-foot fence, and let's say it only goes 1 foot over the at-grade level, doesn't make sense. So that's why I want to understand the intent of these directions. Otherwise, I'd like to put potential different verbiage. So I'm not sure if I got a clear answer from administration of what that intent of the other directions are. CO Panasic?
Through the mayor to members of council, just because we don't know the exact grades and the exact location of the fence may vary, and it could vary on a number of different factors, at least going, looking behind there, it drops off very quickly. So the further back in our right of way you build it, the higher you'll likely have to build it. If you can build it up close, I don't know if we would need any more than a 8-foot fence. There will be we will have to remove some trees in order to give us enough room to get in there. But, I think at this point, the verbiage could just say simply as providing an adequate visual block of the commercial entity. And as long as we know that, we can make sure that in the details, that whatever we do, we'll ensure that there's going to, there will be a block or a visual block from that entity.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. I have Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So an opinion question for administration regarding the planting of trees as an option. Is it reasonable to expect that there's the potential added benefit with planting additional trees there, that will help minimize soil erosion on that slope? And if there's no answer available because we haven't looked at geotechnical, that's fine. Just wondering if it's been talked about.
Through the mayor to members of council, that's a tough one for me to answer with complete confidence. Yes, trees do typically stabilize slopes, but I think I don't know how much that slope has been moving around, especially with the retaining walls. But hypothetically, yes, the introduction of trees will provide some stability.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Taylor.
I have a question and then I'm prepared to make a motion. When you say for the 2024 budget as presented, like, why do you say 2024 budget? You mean that we're going to delay this another year?
Through the mayor to members of council, that is our recommendation. Yes, is to include that in the 2024 budget.
Yeah, just asking why we would say that. We don't have the money for it, or?
Well, through the mayor, if council would like to authorize the budget to allow us to, we certainly could. A part of the reason for the recommendation was just because we have a very busy summer with a lot of projects on the go, and it was one that we would have a pretty quick turnaround on to go ahead and source it, to build it, to get everything done before the end of the season with already a full plate. If it's a priority at council, I can talk to my staff. I'm sure we could do it in this year, but it's time is winding down.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to go with the recommended option. Option 3. With one slight modification. That council approve option 3 to plant additional trees, shrubs along the north side of the Forsyths Drive to the property line of 409 as presented, and take out for the 2024 budget. And I think this will help solve the problem. I think we could get it done this year. I'm reluctant to force a fence between people who don't want fences by their property. I'm not, I don't think prepared to do that. And I think the price of, I think we should do something, and the price of this is something that we could fit into this year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor. For myself, I won't be supporting this direction. This has been a long-standing issue with things that we have learned that we could have done differently. And to me, buffering the non-residential and residential areas are taking, seriously with everything we do in planning. And since this one has a caveat, it has a history where there was an understanding in the past that residents up there thought they would be getting a thicker buffer, a better buffer. To me, the motion on the floor just really helps one home, 1.5. That wasn't the intent. To me, having a fence that's an adequate height above grade to separate the commercial and non and residential area is important. And to me, the trees is just simply not enough to fix something that we've been told that we've misstepped in the past. And to me, I'd like to rectify this as close to 100% as possible. Although I do acknowledge that this direction does help a little bit, I just don't think it's quite enough. Now I have Councillor Race in queue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will not be supporting this motion. I was hoping we would go with option 1, at least to get this to our capital budget. I need to hear from all of the residents up there what they're thinking. And also, in regards to a wall, in regards to trees. I want to know what the actual cost is gonna be for trees, what the actual cost will be for fencing. So I will not support this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. I have Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am supporting the motion in principle at least, but I would want to look to administration for some guidance on if it passes in its current wording, does that mean it's going to happen for sure in 2023? And if it does, where is that, where from the budget will that money be coming from?
Through the mayor to Councillor Stashik. So I just had a quick sidebar with our Director of Corporate Services. So our preference would actually be to possibly include as a part of the motion to come from contracted services as a approved overage. And if we have that, we can certainly go ahead this year. For option 3, it would be much easier to order in some trees and get them planted this year than building a fence. So I can say fairly confident that this could occur in 2023.
Follow up. So just for clarification, would it come from reserves then, since it's not been budgeted?
Essentially, yes, it would come from reserves. I mean, we can, if we can absorb it through the contracted services, it'd be great, but approving an overage essentially means that if it does go over, that would be from reserves.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor LaBerge.
Before I make up my mind on this one, I guess I need to sort of figure out another one. So on the top of page 18 of 33, they sort of label 109. The house that's immediately behind it, and I meant to drive up there today and get the house number straightened up, probably 107 or 111. The house immediately to the west of 109. Now, given that fence is going to run immediately along that property, has there been a discussion with that landowner as it relates to a fence being built there? I don't want to get into a situation where you make one person happy and 6 people mad.
Through the mayor, just for clarification, is this the house on the very end?
Yes.
Yeah, I can speak to that one. So that one would be immediately adjacent to that landowner. That fence would be running through 2 pieces of private property. So there's no guarantee that we could get it done. We would need landowner's permission to include it in there. Now, generally speaking, looking at the total price of the fence, we figure that portion of it would be approximately $6,000. But it is in between 2 pieces of private property that we would not own, and we would have to go and at least get we'd have to get permission to build.
So if 109 doesn't want it, the house next door to 109 doesn't want it. So then we're back to option 1. Like it seems to me that before we sort of build a box around this thing, we should probably get that figured out before we're picking a fight with everybody up there.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thought long and hard about this one, to be quite honest. And I think where I'm landing at this point is that I think the town has a responsibility to try and do some remediation up there. I think really the question is, to what degree do we want to? I'm going to be speaking in favor of the motion. I think really the goal at this stage in the game should be trying to offer some measure of privacy and separation to the same degree that existed prior to the development. And for myself, that doesn't mean enhancing what wasn't there before. It means trying to get back to what was. And I think the best thing we can do at this point in the game is to plant trees and try to develop the natural foliage in that area back to a better, previous thickness. For myself, I'd actually be in favor of extending that line of trees further to the end of 109. But again, just trying to read the room and what might be palatable to all of council. I think this is a reasonable accommodation. I think this, unfortunately, this is one of those things where there's some compromise that needs to be met, which again means making everybody equally unhappy. And I think this is where the best bet might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To administration. Has administration reached out to all the residents at Forest Heights? And they're all aware of what's going on here today and in the past?
Through the mayor, no, we have not reached out to all the residents of that area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Council, any further debate or questions? Seeing none, the direction on the floor is that council approve option 3 to plant additional trees, shrubs along the north side of Forest Heights Drive, 40 meters, 131 feet to the property line of 109 Forest Heights Drive as presented. And voting will commence. And that is carried 4-3 with myself, Councillor Race, and LeBerge against. Council, anything further for 6.2? Seeing none, thank you, administration and council. That will bring us to 6.3, appointments of the Regional Assessment Review Board. CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I will turn this one over to Ms. Barbeau.
Good afternoon, Mayor Michaels, members of council. Today, administration is here to look for appointments to the Assessment Review Board. The town of Hinton is a member of the West Yellowhead Assessment Review Board, along with the municipality of Jasper, town of Edson, and Improvement District 12. To comply, each council must appoint their own board members, a minimum of 2 preferably, and their own municipal clerk. Councils must also jointly appoint a designated chair and a designated clerk for the Regional Assessment Review Board. The intent of the regional board is to have the regional chair and the regional clerk rotate between participating communities. And it's thought that this composition of the board helps share knowledge and create strength and stability within the required boards. For 2023, it is Hinton's turn to provide a person to fill the role of designated chair, with Jasper providing the individual to fill the clerk's position. Administration is before council today to request the appointment of Lee Beamish as the designated chair for West Yellowhead Regional Assessment Board, to appoint Michelle Deshane from Jasper as the regional clerk, and finally to appoint Lila Moselle to the West Yellowhead Regional Review Board for a 3-year term effective July 1st. I believe Ms. Moselle's information was sent to you privately under separate cover to protect her personal information. Thank you.
Thank you, administration. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am prepared to furnish the recommended action. And if administration is willing, I'd like to include the whole recommended action unless council requests a split. So that council appoint Lee Beamish Hinton as the designated chair for the West Yellowhead Regional Assessment Review Board for a 1-year term effective July 1st, 2023, thereby extending her appointment to the board to July 1st, 2024. And that council appoint Michelle Deshane from Jasper as the designated clerk for the West Yellowhead Regional Assessment Review Board for a one-year term effective July 1st, 2023, and that council appoint Lila Mazel to the West Yellowhead Review Board for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2023. Mr. Mayor, I don't need to speak on that.
Thank
I
you.
do, however, would like to say thanks to everybody for volunteering their time and effort.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor, which is the recommended action. Any debate or questions? Councillor LaBerge.
Lila is Lyla.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council, any further debate, questions? Seeing none, and that is the recommended action, I will not reread it, and we will commence voting. That is carried unanimously. Council, anything further for 6.3? Seeing none, thank you again, administration. That'll bring us to 6.4, public auction sale date, CAO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll turn that one over to Ms. Barbeau as well.
Thank you. Before you today is our request to set a public auction sale date as September 22nd, 2023. The date is required to be set for to allow administration time to be compliant with all the advertising requirements. Setting the sale date does not mean that administration will cease collection efforts. They will be ongoing up until the time of the sale date to work with owners and try to get as many properties as we can off of the tax recovery sale list.
Thank you, Ms. Barbeau. Council, any questions, directions? What would we like to do with 6.4? Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that council approve the setting the public auction sale for September 22nd, 2023 at 1:00 p.m. for any properties listed on the March 2022 arrears list where property taxes remain unpaid.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate, questions? Seeing none, voting is commenced. And that is also carried unanimously. Council, anything else for 6.4? Again, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Barbeau. That'll bring us to 6.5, setting reserve bids for properties and tax arrears, CAO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. This one will go to Ms. Barbeau as well.
Thank you, Council. My final for the agenda this evening. Administration has currently identified 7 properties that are, as far as legislation goes, eligible to be sold at the upcoming public auction for tax recovery. As stated before, all efforts to remove these properties from the listing in an acceptable manner, meaning the taxes are paid or an agreement that is being fulfilled on a regular basis happens. In order to mitigate costs for this, rather than go out for individual appraisals on all of the properties, which we have no access to the inside of the properties, so they're all done from the exterior, we instead contacted our contracted assessor for the town of Hinton and asked him to give us a forced sale appraisal or assessment price for those properties. Those assessment prices were sent out to you, and administration is looking today for council to set reserve bids for the listed properties in the event that we are not able to collect unpaid taxes by the sale date.
Thank you, Ms. Barbeau. Council. Any questions or directions? Councillor Haas.
I'd like to move that we select option 1, the council approve the reserve bid as listed there for properties whose tax arrears remain unpaid on the date of the 2023 tax recovery auction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor, and if I could just ask Councillor Hawes to have a look on it at the screen just to make sure everything is recording. And Council, any debate or questions? Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you. So to come up, when I take a look at the forced bid sales value and the assessment for the property, one is a real small subset of the other. So obviously you're laying some pretty strict conditions on a forced sale. I guess, I mean, for argument's sake, you take someone's home away for a third of its value. That's a difficult position to put people in. Like, how do we come up with that value, I guess?
Through the chair to all of council. So when through the assessment process in the province of Alberta, your values of a property are based on two critical dates within the year. One is market value the preceding July, and the other is the physical condition on December 31st of the current year. So in 2023, taxes were based on assessed values for 2022. So there's always the year gap. The assessor does not have access to the inside of the property at the time they are providing this information to us, but they do have accumulative contents in their files, which may have some furnishings in the house or particular finishes. If there's been a remodeling done, or if there hasn't been any remodeling done, then it very well could be of a lower value. Administration does have a report coming to council at the June 27th committee of the whole meeting for further discussion on some of the tax recovery and the challenges that administration has been facing. It is a very unfortunate situation, and I definitely do not like coming to you with these asks. But we did have the tax recovery sale in September of 2022, and we had no bidders show up. So the values that are put out, I feel are fair from the assessor. He's been the assessor for the town of Hinton for a number of years. They have very good knowledge of the physical condition of the properties as of December 31st, 2022. And with that, I have to leave it at council's discretion. We can certainly go back. We can have the independent appraisals done for all the properties. It is a cost of $399 per property as a starting. But the appraisal person will also not have access to the inside property. So they will be making their determination on the value based on exterior looks only.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council, any further debate, questions? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is the recommended action that council approve a reserve bid of the 7 items there for properties whose tax arrears remain unpaid on the date of the 2023 tax recovery auction, and voting will commence. That is carried unanimously. Council, anything else for 6.5? Seeing no one, again, thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. That brings us to our last action item for this afternoon, 6.6, physician recruitment and retention. CO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So since the time of writing this report, things have changed a little bit. Members of council have met with the Hinton Healthcare Foundation to talk about this. The Hinton Healthcare Foundation has approved a motion to pay for June, July, and August. So I do not believe that there's any need for us to make a similar motion, and my recommended action at this point would be to receive the report for information. The other thing that I will add is in in discussions with the Hinton Forestry Center. They have also provided an option to house the locums at some of their residents that they have on site there. And there's some private rooms with private bathrooms, and they have offered them up. So we have connected the Hinton Forestry Center with the Healthcare Foundation, but at this time we'll recommend to receive for information.
Thank you, Seo Panasic. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then I will make the now recommended action that we receive this report for information. However, if I may just speak to it for a second, I'd like to express my appreciation to the Hinton Healthcare Foundation for stepping up, identifying that need and being willing to fill it. And of course, to the Hinton Training Center for also trying to ease that burden and working together to find a solution as a community. And then last, to my colleagues on council, we certainly know that healthcare is the purview of the province, but nonetheless, I think all of us, for the most part, identified there was a huge concern and that we were willing to tackle this as a council. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor to accept this for information. I have Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this. I'd also like to say, I think that the town of Hinton, well, I don't know, but I think that working closely with the foundation in the future on the long term, well, no, I shouldn't say long term, on the solution of what we're going to do in the future is going to be important. I mean, the long term solutions with the provincial government and getting them on side, whether we do that, but just not having doctors and ERs is a scary thing, especially for older people or not having adequate health care. So it's hopefully this maybe is a start of a long-term relationship with the Hinton Healthcare Foundation, not just for doctors, but for healthcare professionals as well. Towards a more long-term solution, which might better include the provincial government. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo what Councillor Taylor said. We did have a conversation with the Healthcare Foundation, and this was something definitely that they had discussed previous to us coming to them as a delegation and discussed and did some legwork. But they're looking at also the bigger picture. It's not just our doctors, but other healthcare providers as well in our community, whether it's from nursing or other departments. You know, and it's not a Hinton only problem, but they are looking at it and looking at extending relationships and collaboration between the town and other possibilities to try and see what can we do for the future of healthcare in Hinton. So it was a good conversation, and I also agree with the motion put forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, any further debate, comments? Seeing none, the motion is that council receive this request for information and we will commence voting. And that is carried unanimously. Council, anything further for 6.6? Oh, sorry, Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Not directly related, but somewhat related. Regarding the other motion that was made at committee the whole last week in terms of this, there was a direction to administration to bring back a report on alternatives for supporting the attraction and retention of healthcare professionals. I think that's still an important conversation to have, and as soon as we can. I just was hoping to get an update from administration on when that might be coming back to council.
Administration.
Thank you through the mayor and members of council. So I don't have an exact date that I can provide at this time. But what I can say is, you know, what I mentioned in the committee meeting last week was that I think it's important to have at least those discussions with the Hinton Healthcare Foundation. There's also an organization that that focuses on healthcare attraction and retention through RPAP. I think that they may have a role to play in this. So I think that we'll approach this from a foundational standpoint where we want to have those discussions with those relevant agencies first, get everybody's feelings about what the problem is, on why we're having difficulties attracting and retaining healthcare professionals, and from there develop the necessary options that we can look at providing. So it will take a little bit of time. I don't have an exact date, but I would imagine within the next month or two.
I may. Thank you for that. I appreciate the response. I think it's important that we have a very well-informed and rounded report that comes back to us. So yeah, thank you for that. And I look forward to seeing it when it does come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. I have Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I think it's also important that if we're doing this in conjunction with others and we're working with other groups, it gives a broader message to the healthcare professionals in Hinton that the community cares about this issue, and we're all willing to work towards finding some sort of resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, anything further for 6.6? Seeing none, again, thank you, administration and council. That'll bring us to our notice of motion component for this afternoon. And there is one 7.1 council workshop by Councillor Taylor. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Taylor?
Yeah.
One moment. Administration, are we putting up the notice of motion, at least visually? Perfect. Councillor Taylor.
Not much to say right now, because I know we'll have a chance to discuss this later, but this is the workshop that we discussed on May 9th, 2023, where the thought was that it might occur in Edmonton. I know that's not for sure, or another such far away a location with possible additional travel costs of up to $8,000 or more dollars that would occur over and above if the workshop took place in Hinton or nearby. And I've received some input from the public that indicates that such out-of-town trips not necessarily appropriate unless there's a really good reason for them, you know, with the messaging we've been doing on tourism and that sort of thing. And the funds could be better spent within Hinton. More to say later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. That will be all for our notices of motion. That'll bring us to our reporting, and I will start on my left with Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I have nothing to report since last week.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only thing to report had our last, or second last, I should say, youth advisory council meeting. We'll have another one to wrap things up in September, but a break over the summer. However, we did complete the project. The youth completed their art project, and I believe it's this Thursday. They'll be putting them up. So they're paintings assisted by a local artist to trace them out. The youth painted them, and they're various different stages of rail cars, and it's going to go in the windows of the rail car at the museum. So they'll be putting those up, I believe, Thursday, with some, I believe, representation there from The Voice. So appreciate that. Also had an opportunity to meet with council last night with the Hinton Library Board and council to go over a few things, and I really appreciate council's input. It's something that we have slated for the agenda for our board meeting on next Monday in regards to specifically to our reserve policies and having a more in-depth conversation with that. So I really appreciated the questions that were asked by council and you know, the thoughts that were brought to the table. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Taylor.
I attended the tourism workshop this week and won't talk much about it, but the thing that I thought was encouraging that sent a good message was that there were 3 councillors that showed up. So that kind of attendance at something like that says that you know, we're there with you for these kind of things that are going on. Attended the Healthcare Foundation thing that we talked about. No more to say there. And I attended the library board meeting from last night, and the new information for me, and if anybody who wasn't there wants more, I can maybe try. but was related to the reserves and what contributes toward the reserves and how big the reserves are and why the reserves are the way that they are. So that was an insight that we hadn't been provided with, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on Thursday, I also met with the Youth Council. They spent much of their time completing their presentation that they will be giving to council and also working on painting. Also on last night, we met with the library board and I found that very, very informative. Good meeting. Today, we met with the Hinton Healthcare Foundation and I'm extremely happy with the results of that meeting. And I too attended the tourism workshop on Thursday. I found it a very good meeting. I actually felt like I was at an economic development summit. It was very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I don't bring details back from it, but I am sitting on the investment review committee through Community Futures. I must say that with commercial lending, not only have rates started to skyrocket as far as small business goes, the availability of capital has really dried up as well. And just Community Futures really provides a bit of a fill in the middle of the gap. I did have the opportunity this weekend to do one of my favorite things, and that was participate in Lemonade Day. It's such a well-run program where these kids have the opportunity to design, build, and execute on a small business. They all do a great job, and the lemonade this year was even good. So I too took in the PAR 999 presentation. I think it was good. The breadth of representation there was important. We had developers there, we had landowners there, and good representation from the town. So I thought that was fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Nothing for me to add, so I will move on to CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. The only thing I have to report at this time is, as you can tell, we have experienced a tremendous amount of rain over the past few days. I did receive a report that the town experienced anywhere between 100 and 200 millimeters of rain, depending on our two rain gauges. Both are not within town boundaries, but this is characteristic of either a 50 or 100-year low intensity, long duration rainfall event. So it was significant rainfall. Our crews are busy with some localized issues with certain drainage and fixing up some alleyways that may have gotten a little bit washed out, but our crews will be busy for a little while just with some of those localized issues there. But happy to report that we didn't, or at least I haven't received a tremendous amount of complaints or issues, but I think that's testament to some of the work that Trent and his crew have been doing. But that's all I have for now. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. I have Councillor Taylor.
I think the Gregg Avenue project will be completed. I've had concern about that raised to me.
Through the mayor to members of council. So that will be completed in 2 phases. The actual completion date, I believe, is July 19th, and I'll refer that to Mr. McLaughlin.
Yeah, that the completion date hasn't changed. The contractor's now lost a couple of days to rain, which might be a small extension. We did have also a water break, which we lost about another day and a half. So, you know, all totaled, we're probably 5 days behind, but I'm not aware that the contractor won't be able to make up that time at this point.
And that's phase 1. Phase 2 is the repaving of the road? Or is it all going to be done by July 19th?
I think that was, I believe that was I'd have to look up the completion date. If you give me a minute, I'll follow up with you right after the meeting. I'll look it up.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. That'll bring us to our closed session component for this afternoon. I will entertain a motion. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we move into closed session.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate? Seeing none, we will commence voting.
Oh.
And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone.